Hi there. I'm Sharon McEntee, and it is a beautiful day out. And so Pastor Jeff came up with the idea at a worship team meeting. So it was a worship team meeting. So I was handy. So he tagged me, but he would like to do like a weekly devotional series where maybe somebody comes and talks about what Jesus has been doing in our lives during our enforced viral staycation. So like I said, I was handy, but I kind of do have something that the Lord has been showing me during this time. So it was like just a few days ago that I woke up with the thought, and I felt like it was the Holy Spirit saying that, Sharon, before all this hit, there were a lot of things and ideas and people that were vying for your attention, kind of fighting for my attention, pulling me away from what's truly important. So when this is all over, I'm going to take a look at some of those things that I've been involved in and doing and pray about it and ask the Holy Spirit to guide me there. Well, then I've been working through the book of Romans, and so God showed me this verse that Paul writes about in Romans. So let me just read a little piece of this real quick, and then we're going to unpack it a little bit and look at it a little bit more deeply. So Paul writes to the Romans, "Do not be conformed to this world." I should put these on. Sorry. "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind." Now there's a little more in there, but we're going to hone in on that. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. So, I looked up that word conform. Do not be conformed to this world. And when Paul writes about this conform thing, he is talking about the external stuff. If he were writing it today, he might say, don't focus on what's trending. Don't focus on all of that. The word conform has the idea of bending and shaping and fashioning and posturing ourselves with all that stuff that's out there. I work a lot with fabric, and I'm constantly taking that piece of fabric and cutting it up and then moving it and shifting it and trying to get it to fit into the overall quilt. And I'm just noticing, well, there's quite a lovely little quilt behind me. It's not true. I'm not just noticing it. I purposefully positioned this, so I'm a shameless liar. So anyway, conforming, bending, twisting. And the world will try to do that sometimes to get us to conform to what it says we should or should not do. Now, I want to say, there is nothing wrong or bad or sinful with what might be trending. Like, Chip and Joanna Gaines, Fixer Upper, love. Remember when she brought up all that shiplap stuff? And there is nothing wrong with looking at those shows. Tim McEntee loves Chip Gaines. Don't tell him I told you, but he loves Chip. There's nothing wrong with looking at those shows and thinking, that shiplap would look great in our house. And I love what she's doing with this and that. Nothing wrong with any of that. Eyewear, it's always changing, right? Remember when it was wire rims, and then these bigger, thicker lens frames came out, like what our parents and grandparents wore in the 40s, and vintage frames became real popular. There's nothing wrong with wanting to look kind of modern and what's going on. There's nothing wrong with, Starbucks. In fact, there is so much right with Starbucks. So there's nothing wrong with looking at what the outside world is doing. It's when that becomes our focus, when we turn our attention to that and put our energies into that instead of what's going on in here and here. And that's what Paul's encouraging us to think about. So he says, don't conform, don't bend and shape and mold yourself to what's out here. But be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Now, I want to look at this word transformed. In the original Greek, you'll recognize this. In the original Greek, the word is metamorpho. Huh? Metamorpho. What's that remind you of? Metamorphosis. And the word implies a process. It's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. When we come into saving relationship with Jesus Christ, when he changes us, when he makes the old become new, and he changes us by that mysterious, wondrous, miraculous work that he does in our spirit, he does that. Paul says in Colossians, he transfers our spirit to heaven. We're there. We reside with him. He puts eternity in our hearts. But, I hate to put a but in there, but this metamorphosis, this transformation is a process. When Jesus saves us, he saves our spirits. He changes that. But he doesn't change our hair color. I wish he would. He doesn't change our eye color. If we have a long torso and 2 short legs, he doesn't change any of that. Nor does he change, if you're an introvert, before you come to Christ, chances are you're still going to be an introvert. If you're an extrovert, probably still going to be an extrovert. If you're a big picture kind of person or a detailed person, that stuff remains. And so do all of our insecurities and our fears. And that's the stuff that's a process. A lifelong journey that we get to go on with Jesus. Remember the root word for transformed, metamorphosis? We all learned about caterpillars and butterflies in, grade school, middle school, I don't know. It's been a long time. And you remember that little cute, little fuzzy caterpillar that we pet and, oh, aren't you cute? It does not become a butterfly overnight, right? It takes time and some very hard work. I was just reading that the caterpillar, in order to become a butterfly, it has to digest itself. And it does that very thoroughly, except that certain cells remain. And it's those cells that become wings. They become wings that let that creepy, crawly, okay, not creepy, if you like them, but they are crawly. Excuse me, it lets that little crawly thing become this glorious, flying, beautiful butterfly. And that's the word that Paul uses here. That kind of change. The big fancy Bible word maybe you've heard is sanctification. That's the lifelong process. That's the lifelong journey that we get to have with Jesus. And so, like I said before, that I felt God's Spirit telling me that certain things had been vying for my attention, keeping me from focusing on that inner transformation. So, I want to change that. And maybe you could pray with me about that. You know what? That's just really all I got to say. This is good and short. Well, I don't know about good, but it's short. Now, so Pastor Jeff, I just got to be first because I was handy, but he is going to be asking some of you if you would like to do one of these little devotions. And I hope that when he does, you'll pray about saying yes. Who of you will be second or third or 10th or 20th in this? And if he doesn't ask you, you know, if you feel like you have something to share, put your little hand up. It's like my mama used to say, Sharon K, in that classroom, that teacher doesn't know you have something to say until you put your hand up and say, pick me. Pick me. So I hope some of you will say, pick me, to Pastor Jeff, and that you will share with us what God has been doing with you, speaking into your heart, saying to you during this time when God's been able to kind of maybe get our attention a little better. All right, that concludes this broadcast. Thank you for listening. Can't wait to see you guys. Love you, love you, love you. Later.